It's a very warm welcome to all our viewers and welcome to a new edition of the Daily Debate, our show bringing you all the latest news and developments and of course very interesting topics all under discussion in tonight's episode of the Daily Debate. Tonight you are in the company of myself, Angie Meher, and of course we have a lot in store for you. We begin straight away with a look at some of the news making the headlines. Today's edition of the show will focus on the recent developments in Egypt, and ever since President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi assumed office in 2014, he's established a new era in strengthening unity and cooperation between the countries of Africa, declaring that Egypt will continue to work side by side with African countries to achieve sustainable development as well as other developmental goals. This is our main debate and topic under discussion in the studio tonight, and we'll be later joined by our distinguished guest, Dr. Vivienne Morris, our political analyst, who will be telling us much more about this evening's topic. But first, let's take a look at the latest news making the headlines, and we now bring you a report on the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken's visit to Egypt and his meeting with President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. We have more details in this report. Stay tuned.
President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi welcomed U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken in Egypt on Wednesday, where they deliberated on developments in the Palestinian territories and the escalating regional situation. During the meeting, Blinken conveyed President Joe Biden's appreciation for Egypt's vital role in restoring regional stability. President Sisi reciprocated the sentiment, emphasizing the importance of the U.S.-Egypt strategic partnership in safeguarding mutual interests and reinforcing regional security. President Sisi called for decisive intervention to eliminate barriers hindering the delivery of huge quantities of much-needed aid to the people of Gaza, who are facing disastrous living and health conditions. The head of state underlined the necessity to halt the Israeli violations in the West Bank and avert the escalating policies against Palestinian people. President Sisi and Blinken further discussed joint efforts made by Egypt, the United States and Qatar to advance negotiations towards a ceasefire and detainees swap and facilitate the humanitarian aid delivery. Discussing the situation in the Palestinian territory, President Sisi and Blinken emphasized that the two-state solution remains the track towards sustainable peace and security. It's worth mentioning that since the beginning of the war in Gaza, Israeli occupation forces have targeted vital infrastructure, including hospitals and schools, displacing the majority of the 2.2 million inhabitants and pushing the region to the brink of famine. Regarding Lebanon pager blasts, President Sisi reiterated Egypt's solidarity with Lebanon following the cyber attack that the country suffered recently. The President emphasized Egypt's commitment to Lebanon's security, stability and sovereignty. The President stressed Egypt's rejection of attempts to escalate the conflict and expand its scope across the region, highlighting the need for all parties to demonstrate responsibility. Meanwhile, President Sisi and Blinken agreed on intensifying efforts between the two countries to achieve de-escalation and restore regional peace and security.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and we're now delighted to be joined over the telephone by our distinguished guest, His Excellency Ambassador Mohamed, the former Foreign Minister. It's a very good evening to you, Mr. Ambassador.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for your time and for joining us this evening on the Daily Debate. And let me start by asking you, how do you see the significance of this visit, especially at this current timing with President Sisi and the U.S. Secretary of State Blinken addressing some of the challenges about the situation in Gaza, specifically the delivery of sustainable aid to Gaza amidst the escalating crisis?
Yeah, I think the visit actually was devoted to just meeting in Cairo with President Sisi and the Foreign Minister Badr Abdel Ati, which means that Secretary Blinken arrived here just to have a consultation with the leader of Egypt and the Foreign Minister, which means that Egypt is playing a pivotal role now in the region. Yes. And I think the United States is always looking to the Egyptian efforts to reach the ceasefire in Gaza has an important role. And of course, the strategic dialogue, which starts today, or let us say, which was resumed today, I think it will be also a significant step in the relation between the two countries, which means that Egypt now is playing an important role in the region. And the United States, I think Secretary Blinken just mentioned that we cannot ignore the Egyptian role, and we cannot, let us say, try to put the Egyptian diplomacy on the side, but it is an important element in the region, and the United States always depend on the role of Egypt as the Egyptian diplomacy.
Absolutely, Your Excellency. Now, regarding the role that Egypt is playing in the ongoing ceasefire negotiations, Egypt has hosted several times many rounds of negotiations. Tell us a bit about their partnership between Egypt, the United States and Qatar, and how these efforts are coming along.
Well, I think the three countries they already has exerted a lot of efforts, and it was, a very difficult negotiation and many rounds in different places. But I think the Israeli policy is still adamant, and they are not keen to reach, any kind of ceasefire, and they are trying to follow their policy in Gaza by destroying the region and trying to escalate even now with what happened in Lebanon yesterday and today. And I think the Israeli government is not keen to reach any sort of peaceful solution for the situation in Gaza or even in South Lebanon, which means that this country actually went out and went very far of all the parameters of the region, and even the parameters of the international law and the UN Charter.
Indeed. Your Excellency, as you mentioned, Lebanon, of course, it has gone through quite a lot lately with the recent attacks and cyber attacks. How do you see President Sisi's emphasis that Egypt will support Lebanese security and stability? And in your opinion, sir, what needs to happen now from the international community to de-escalate the tension in the region?
Well, I think Lebanon needs, let's say, Arab solidarity in this stage, and I think Lebanon needs a lot of medical help also, because the casualties are so large, and the number of the people were affected by this attack. I think it is even above the Lebanese capabilities. So I think the Arab world should stand with Lebanon and also the international community. And I think we should now, all of us, especially that we are on the verge to have the General Assembly meetings in New York, the annual meetings. I think our voice as people caring about humanity, I think all of us, we should stand against the Israeli policy, and we should express these views during the General Assembly meeting, which I think Netanyahu himself is going there, which I think is a very bad signal that this man has no manners at all, and is trying, to go even to the General Assembly and to express his policies, which I think everybody denounced, his approach and his policies in the region.
Absolutely right. I'd like to thank you very, very much, Your Excellency Ambassador Mohamed Oraby, the former Foreign Minister. Thank you so much for your time and your insight on tonight's edition of the Daily Debate. And now, ladies and gentlemen, back to tonight's topic and tonight's debate, Egypt's central influence in Africa. We take a look at this report, and we'll be right back with our guest for the evening. Stay tuned.
Under the leadership of President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, Egypt has reinforced its pivotal role in Africa, positioning itself as a key player in the continent's political, economic and security spheres. The country's renewed focus on Africa reflects a strategic re-engagement with its African neighbors based on shared goals of regional stability, economic development and deeper cooperation. One of President Sisi's most notable achievements is his active participation in resolving regional conflicts and mediating peace processes. Egypt's vital involvement in the negotiations to end the conflict in South Sudan and its support for peace efforts in Libya and the Horn of Africa have highlighted its diplomatic role. The Egyptian government has positioned Egypt as a mediator that promotes African-led solutions to African problems, emphasizing the importance of stability and security for sustainable development. President Sisi has made substantial strides in enhancing Egypt's development cooperation with African countries, particularly in infrastructure. One of the key initiatives in this regard is Egypt's involvement in the development of the Aswan-Cape Town Road, a transcontinental highway aimed at boosting trade and connectivity between North and Southern Africa. This project aligns with President Sisi's vision of improving infrastructure as a driver for economic integration across Africa. President Sisi has placed a strong emphasis on security cooperation with African nations, particularly in the fight against terrorism and extremist ideologies. Egypt has hosted numerous African defense and security meetings. Through these platforms, Egypt has underscored the need for collaborative security frameworks to tackle terrorism, which continues to threaten many African Through these platforms, Egypt has underscored the need for collaborative security frameworks to tackle terrorism, which continues to threaten many African nations. Under President Sisi, Egypt has reaffirmed its pivotal role in Africa, fostering deeper cooperation in diplomacy, economic development, security and cultural exchange. By strengthening ties with African nations through infrastructure projects, diplomacy and regional peace efforts, Egypt has positioned itself as a central figure in the continent's future. Sisi's leadership reflects a long-term vision that seeks not only to benefit Egypt, but also to contribute to the collective progress and stability of Africa. As Egypt continues to expand its influence on the continent, its role as a regional leader is likely to grow, shaping Africa's path towards greater integration and development.